You are listening to The Bloodcast.
Only on Geek Nation.
Hello and welcome to The Bloodcast, Geek Nation's bloodiest podcast. I am your host, CJ. Arabia. Cricket Lee has started her own podcast on Geek Nation called Geckin. You can listen to that every Friday on Geek Nation. Sorry, Cricket, to not have you here today, but I have two very exciting special guests. We have my housemate, Mather Zickel, who is an actor and, I don't know, avid board game player.
Yeah.
And we've been playing a lot of board games, and he likes to box.
Yeah. I don't think anyone cares about all that, though.
They might. I don't know. Yeah. And Jeff Connor. Jeff?
Good afternoon, CJ. Nice to talk to you guys.
Nice to talk to you too, Jeff. You're going to hear some sounds of my computer in the background. Jeff, where are you talking to us from?
Right now, I am on the Skype system from Deerfield, Massachusetts.
Right. And Jeff and Mather go back a long time. When did you guys first meet?
We met in high school. We went to a school called Pomfret in Pomfret, Connecticut. And we met in...
a private school?
A private school.
For the wealthy elite of the Upper East Coast?
Yes.
That's us, yes.
That's us.
Yes.
Yeah, we're the cream of the crop. And we met in what? The fall of 84, yeah.
Fall of 1984 on the football field.
What were you guys doing on the football field? Was there a D&D game in the middle on the 50-yard line?
There very well might have been, but we were also partaking in some football, and we quickly discovered through being in the same offensive huddle that we like to describe some aspects of the game. I don't know if I want to use the word violently, but with a certain cutthroat ambition that turns out came from our mutual love of old horror movies. And that's part of the way we developed a relationship.
Butchery.
And butchery, yes. And I think it's important to sort of define butchery as we understand it, you know, because I think
define it. What is it?
Well, I mean, you know, you could say, you know, it's killing. But
it's blood. It's gore. It's seeing the kill on film rather than the hand with the knife goes up and then it cuts away to a shadow of a girl's arm.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think I think the mid-'80s was probably the heyday of just cheap slasher movies.
Right.
They were just making them by the scads, and they were just winding up on every local video store's shelves. So there was really no end to these movies. I mean, of course, there were the big ones that everyone saw, like Friday the 13th and Halloween,
right,
and that kind of thing. And then there were just all their their lesser brethren,
right,
which were made for very little money
and went
distributed
almost completely straight to cable at the time. Yes. And also you could buy those.
CJ, what we discovered in the process as actors ourselves and storytellers was that setting up situations for good moments in theater with lots of characters was easy, but seeing through a plot required some real skillfulness. And the beauty of the well-made horror film was that there was no need to really see through any plot. The characters could just be eliminated senselessly and without any real rationale. And the more we found random killers who had really no purpose or plot-driven device,
no motivation,
the more we engaged with the film, and we just dug deeper and deeper until we came across a guy named Herschel Gordon Lewis, who had produced a film called Wizard of Gore, and it was the Wizard of Gore who used the term human butchery to describe his actions, and that's where that word, I think, really came from for us.
That is true. And CJ, you and I watched a Herschel Gordon Lewis movie the other night. We watched an old one, 1963's Blood Feast.
And it was awesome. Let me tell you. I want an Egyptian feast. A traditional Egyptian feast.
That's right.
Okay.
So what we do on the Bloodcast is talk about all our favorite bloody horror. It can be video games, movies, TV shows. And today we're going to talk about, I say we just get right to it. We'll talk about some of these other movies in the next podcast that we saw. Like Mather and I watched Sleepaway Camp 2. You've seen that one, Jeff, right?
I think that's with Bruce Springsteen's little sister.
Yeah,
Isn't it?
that's right.
Yes, that's
Exactly.
right. Body count of 18, which is a pretty good high body count.
But the butcher, but it's very soft butchery. It's just,
Yeah.
it's not
Mullets
good butchery.
aplenty.
Outhouse butchery out there. It's not pleasing.
Outhouse
Yeah.
butchery, exactly.
And the
yeah.
lead girl, well, the other lead girl, other than Bruce Springsteen's sister, Pamela Springsteen, who is also once engaged to Sean Penn, is Renee Estevez, plays Molly, and that's Emilio and Charlie Sheen's sister. And there's even two young boys in it, and the camp counselor goes, "Oh, Emilio and Charlie have been coming to this camp for years." So clearly a throw to that. But
So clearly the movie was produced by the Sheen family.
clearly they had their hand in it. And then there's that
Have fun, CJ, imagining who these actors were and how their subsequent careers could have been ruined by their appearances, either in Pieces or Sleepaway Camp. And Sleepaway Camp 2 sounds like it has that potential.
Also, Sleepaway Camp 2, Brian Patrick Clark, the poor man's Ed Begley Jr., playing a camp counselor.
Ugh.
He still looks just like... So, and the best death from, I would say, Sleepaway Camp 2 is the toilet death, where
The outhouse death. yeah.
he stabs her in the back and shoves her in the outhouse and then pushes her down with, a stick?
Yeah, with
So
a
she
stick,
drowns in a shitty old abandoned outhouse full of leeches, shit, vomit, piss, and like all I can think of being a little bit of a slight germaphobe is that she's stabbed in the back and all those germs are going into her open wound in her back as she's drowning in
Well, she
shit.
has bigger problems than that.
Well, that still sounds like a nightmare.
Yeah.
So, and then Desperate to Survive by the band Obsession, the closing music for that. Desperate to Survive. And then we also happen to watch, and we'll just briefly touch My Bloody Valentine 1981. Total body count 5. Not that many
Not
deaths.
too many, yeah.
But then not that many deaths really in Pieces when we get to it.
Yeah, but every death in Pieces is high quality butchery.
Yeah, so let's just get to Pieces now. Pieces, made in 1982. The movie that Mather has seen more than any other movie on the planet. He's been watching it for 20 years now.
Yep, probably more.
Have you seen it every single year of your life, probably at least? Since 20 years ago, I mean.
Since 20 years, I'll tell you, I'll put it this way. I've certainly seen it more than 20 times. I mean, I've probably seen it. I don't know, Jeff, what do you think? You've seen it more than me, but you and I have watched it together at least 20 times.
Yes, Matthew, that's correct. I want to clarify. We actually discovered the film in the Hastings-on-Hudson video store in the fall of 1987 after I had just moved to New York to attend NYU, which Mather planned on doing the year after. And I think that we've got a lot of comparative study and anatomy with these pictures, but I think it's also important to start the discussion off a little bit more voluminously by saying that Pieces really is the absolute masterpiece, as you sort of indicated in the death comparison. It really is the masterpiece for us in all comparisons for a number of reasons that I think we'll hit on today.
We sure will.
After 25 years, and we've grown into our handsome 40s, it still delivers on every initial punch way back in 1987.
It really is the watershed. It's the watershed film for us. It really defines.
You guys are like
things.
Pieces scholars, really, at this point.
There's so many reasons. It is legit. It's not like one drunken night where you're like, God, I really love that, and then you discover some other perspective. You keep coming back to it, and it keeps overreaching your expectations.
Yeah.
And I just think that we need to start with that coverall statement of excellence.
Yeah, it fires
Awesome.
on all cylinders.
I'm also going to say, as we get into this, that there's going to be spoilers aplenty. So if you want to watch the movie Pieces, which we highly recommend you do, hit pause on the podcast, go and rent it or find it online. It's not on demand on Netflix, but it is a hard rental, meaning you can order the DVD on Netflix. And who knows, maybe it's on YouTube. I didn't look, but there's so many ways to consume movies on demand these days that go watch Pieces. It is so worth it.
I highly recommend
And then
watching
come
it
back.
on an old VHS tape.
We watched it on an old VHS tape last night. So that's
watch it with friends. But CJ, just a point of order. We probably should have talked about this off the air. But are you indicating that in the course of this discussion that we will be revealing the identity of the killer in Pieces?
At the end, we will. Yes, at the end, we are going to talk about the ending of Pieces and everything involved, and we'll give one more spoiler alert and tell you not to listen to that. But we are going to discuss every aspect of Pieces, including the killer and who the real killer is. But we won't get into that till toward the end. So, and we'll let you know when that's about to happen.
The film with equal enjoyment, knowing everything or not knowing anything.
Maybe even more enjoyment when you know who the killer is.
It's great watching the pieces come together.
Right.
And
I apologize for my coughing. I have a little bit of a cough, and that's life, and I'm doing my best. So anyway, basically the plot: young co-eds are being cut up by a chainsaw killer on a college campus. The killer is attempting to put together a human jigsaw puzzle made from body parts. What is the total body count of this movie? I couldn't find it online. Do we think it's 6? Mather said
I say 6. It's 6.
It's a standard 6.
Standard 6. Great.
Now wait, do we have a 6 or a 5 death minimum generally when watching
a 6
butchery?
Death minimum. It needed to be a death about every 15 minutes on average.
Yeah.
Now, Pieces, of course, there is some subsidiary content to consider at the very beginning of the picture and also at the very end of the picture that not only adds potentially to the death minimum, but adds to the quality of the butchery. So you could say that Pieces easily makes its quota and does so with a real seriousness to detail and quality.
Well, Mather said last night, and I wrote it down, so I'm looking at it, one Pieces death is worth 3 deaths in any other film.
I would, largely.
They're so violent and rapey.
I mean, there's one death in it that is possibly the most misogynistic, offensive,
and we'll get
murder.
to it. We are
Sylvia
going to
Costa's
now
death on the
run down.
Is particularly rapey and gross.
And we will get to it. Now, we're going to basically run through Pieces kind of in chronological order, and we're going to spit out our thoughts, feelings, and whatever. How does that sound, Jeff?
That sounds excellent. One quick comment on what you just brought up, just so I know hopefully we have an audience that's with the very thematic.
At least all your students, friends, and family.
But we're not mentally disturbed. You can watch the violence in Pieces much differently than you could watch the violence in a movie that was actually trying to speak about violence. Even though the violence in Pieces is real prime cut, it's still somewhat gelatinous and fun-loving in its presentation. It's not like a Clockwork Orange or something where it's just painful to look at.
Right. So which makes it all the more disgusting in a certain way.
But I want to encourage people to see this picture and not feel.
All right. So the movie opens Boston, 1942. And there's a young boy putting together a nudie puzzle of a naked lady, a pinup, fully naked, full on bush. And his mother comes in and flips out that he's putting together this naked puzzle. She starts screaming at him.
She slaps him a couple times.
Slaps him. How many times does he basically, then she says, go get a trash bag. We're going to put all this stuff. We're going to throw it all away. He disappears and comes back with an axe.
Yes.
And chops her in the head how many times? 4 times?
3 or 4 times.
3 or 4 times in the head. Right in the skull. And you see it. The camera is on her skull. Most movies you would just see a shadow or something. And then that just at that time is when the caretaker, people are coming to see. They obviously haven't been answering their phones. Somebody came to the door, the nanny or a housekeeper, perhaps, to do her daily chores. She immediately gets the police because something has got to be wrong if they're not answering the door. And they break
answering their 1980s push button phone.
Yes,
back in 1942.
that is. There's a few. Now we were looking it up online. There's a few things wrong with this scene, and I'll even look them up. One is that there is a Patriots pennant on the back wall.
The New England Patriots. And
they didn't
1942.
They didn't exist in 1942.
No, definitely not.
Another guffaw or whatever you want to call it is she tells the young boy his dad is obviously not around, that his dad is in the Air Force, and the Air Force also didn't exist in 1942. So
CJ, if I could just
please
get a little anecdotal at this point, just for the quality of the guest portion of this.
Absolutely.
The scene you just described was the scene that was originally narrated on the back box of the videotape. And as Mather and I would hunt and peck through the video stores for this type of quality material, we would often see a narrative like this and then put it in the machine and be disappointed by the absolute opposite plot developments or the real laming down of plot developments compared to as advertised.
Yeah, and basically the false advertising on the back of the box. It never quite
We
delivered.
picked up this box and we were sort of like, wow, this looks really hilarious. I mean, it looks like something that would be completely senseless in our own scope of stupid horror movies. And we took it back, put it in the video, and immediately delivered on the promises on the back of the box. And that's when we knew we had something special.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. It's one of, when Mather and I first started dating, it's one of the first movies he made me watch. I, of course, made him watch Sleepaway Camp. I had never seen Pieces, so I didn't know about it. But Sleepaway Camp, the first one, was a movie that I remember. I saw it in the theater. I could tell you what theater I was sitting in, approximately what seat. Like, it is burned in my brain. And I looked much older than I was, so that I was able to get my sister, and I think we had a friend with us. But anyway, so yeah, this is what Mather brought to our relationship, was Pieces, while I brought Sleepaway Camp. So,
and I brought it to my wife's relationship also. I mean, we did it at our bachelor party at our wedding, which my wife attended. So there's a history.
Now, there is something last night that I noticed. Now, the police come, they find the bloody mother chopped up. He's chopped her up, and they open the closet door. Where's the boy? And the boy is huddled, bloody, and pretending to be upset, pretending someone has broken into the house. And now I thought that you had gotten Mather's nickname of Big Man from this scene, because the little boy is going, Big Man, mommy, where's mommy? And I thought that is where you had started calling Mather Big Man from, but apparently not.
Well, no, although maybe subconsciously that had an effect on me. We've always been fans of Bob and Ray, and we find humor in the understated ridiculousness or the overstated ridiculousness of things. And so,
right.
Because I'm not particularly flashy or adroit in my celebrity status, I was always nicknamed Hollywood. And because Mather's size is so completely average, I'm nicknamed him Big Man. And that's really all that was.
Great.
It was completely forced. It's the most forced nickname ever.
Yeah, and you are the only person who has ever called him Big Man.
It's entirely
Other than maybe his mother when he was 3.
No, she never
Peter
called
Mack,
him.
I think. Maybe.
You're
Peter
a big
Mack.
man.
Yeah.
Okay, so now this film is shot where? In like Puerto Rico and Spain, and it seems like
Boston and Madrid.
it seems though as if all the dialogue in the film has been dubbed over later and is not being used, making me think maybe some of these actors had heavy Spanish accents, because they're clearly, when you look at their lips, most of them seem to be saying the words.
Yeah.
If you're lip reading, that they're saying, but the soundtrack is also a little off, maybe not perfectly synced. Also,
I would wager that a lot of it was shot silently, CJ. In fact, even
Really?
Paul Smith, who's probably the best known American actor besides Christopher George, had a different actor doing his looping, and I think most of the voiceovers for him. So I don't know if the actors were ever taped on location.
well, they're actually saying the lines, regardless of whether they're taped or not. They are actually saying those lines because you can see the words coming out of their mouth. But anyway, so something is up with the audio, and we're not sure. If anyone knows, obviously tell us in the comments. So now we get into the horror film. It's 40 years later, and a mysterious black love is taking a blood-soaked clothing out of a box. It's his mother's clothing, the clothing he killed her in. Who is this mysterious, extremely effed up person, right? Who is this killer? Now, the film, after the opening, whatever you call it, what would you call it in TV? The cold open, which is in 1942.
Sure.
Now we're in the movie. And the killer, it's 40 years later, I guess 40 years later, and he's still saved his mother's bloody clothing in this little box of mementos. And it seems that he is now going to start reassembling the live version of that naked jigsaw puzzle that his mom freaked out about, and then he's going to put this Frankenstein's jigsaw woman into his mother's bloody clothing that he killed her in, and that's his big
dress
plan.
And her shoes. He pulls the shoes out of
The shoes are very important. He has a foot fetish. And then we get to what is one of the weirdest. Mather wasn't sure it was a death. Online, they call it a death. The carefree skateboarder. Skating down the street. It's a girl in a skirt with sneakers, right?
Yeah, on the skateboard. Well, now, Jeff, I think you'll agree with me when I say, I don't think we count this a death. I mean, this is what we refer to as the ceremonial breaking of the mirror.
This
which
is what we call a symbolic induction of the events to come. That's right. This is reflecting back to when Mother was so upset with the initial jigsaw puzzle that she took either a piece of wood or a chair or something, or the box itself, and slammed it against a mirror, breaking the mirror. As soon as she's killed, the breaking of this mirror opens up the door for the killer to reenact.
For
and
new
maybe
butchery,
he was there witnessing it. I'm not sure.
Maybe
symbolic, spiritual.
It seems more like an accident. I don't consider it butchery.
But also, the skateboarder is terrible and can barely skate and looks like she's barely on the board. And she's like, whoa! And then there's some men unloading literally like a 10-foot by 4-foot mirror off of a truck, walking across a sidewalk with nobody spotting them, and she skates into the mirror, which I guess is supposed to have killed her, or not. I don't know, but it's a ceremonial breaking of the mirror. And it's one of those, again, and this happens a few times in the film, where just something weird happens that seems completely unrelated, and we'll get to the Bruce Lee situation.
Well, we'll talk about that.
We'll talk about that when we get there.
But for those who still might be listening, thinking, what is the joy in all this? This first scene,
it is nothing but joy when you put it in.
Demonstrates a quality of pieces that almost no other film has, and that is putting actors into just a helplessly stupid, unactable scene and leaving them there for the camera to just look at each other. And so all what we call filler in pieces, all of the in-between scenes where actors have to try to deal with this tragedy in some vague and unpronounced way, it's just so delicious to watch. It's so funny. It's like watching actors in a skit forget their lines but just trudge through the scene anyway. It's awesome.
If they got rid of the excess scenes,
hello to people, and people are waving hello back in earnest.
Yeah.
She's just skate through a huge plate glass mirror. So it really set the tone for the drama, and it's just unmatchable.
It's true. There are so many scenes in this movie where, like, you could easily just show the cops walking up the hallway into the dean's office, but no, you see them pull into the parking space. You see them open the doors, step out of the car. You see them lock the car. You see, like,
no, there's a lot of shoe leather in the movie. Yeah, and there's a lot of taking way too much time.
Yeah,
to do
doing
things.
stuff.
Yeah.
So anyway, then we cut to, we've got a co-ed in a skirt. She's laying in the grass. There is a mysterious gardener his face is covered. He's wearing a mask.
Now, this is a different girl now.
This is a different girl, right. Now we cut to the campus. Now we see the co-ed probably near campus, skates into the mirror. Now there's sexy girl in a skirt and like some...
In the middle of the quad.
In the middle of the day.
Middle of the day. I mean, everyone's got to be out and about unless there is no one on this campus. Then a bothersome gardener starts a chainsaw to do a little pruning of the bushes or something. Now she's trying to study in her sexy skirt with her legs up in the air. And she says, "Hey, you going to be long?" This is obviously, the sound is very annoying. And he says, "No, it's not going to take long at all," and proceeds
He says, "Just a few minutes,
Just
miss.
a few minutes, miss." And he proceeds to chop her up into pieces right there. The third murder in the first 10 minutes of the movie, basically.
She takes the just a few minutes as an inconvenient reality and turns away from him so that he may cleft her in twain.
Well, no, I mean, let's be specific, though. He doesn't chop her up into pieces. He cuts off her head.
Right, and you see her body laying in the grass, sans head.
Yeah.
And I don't know what they do, because that looks like a real body. And then is her head backwards in a fake grass? I don't even know, but
I don't know. I'm not certain that people were not killed in the making of pieces.
That all the murders aren't actually real. So now we meet the police that have now been called because we have a murder.
And can we just say about the puzzle, too? Because, right before this murder, between the ceremonial breaking of the mirror, the girl skating through the plate glass mirror,
yes,
and this death on campus, we see the killer with the black gloves, the unrevealed killer, start to pull out the old jigsaw puzzle, the old pornographic jigsaw puzzle, and start to put it together.
Letting us know that he's going to try to reassemble a woman of some sort.
That's right. So the first thing he puts together is the head of the woman in the puzzle. And then
he cuts off the head of the woman laying in the grass.
Campus.
So he's taken her head. So her body he leaves because he doesn't need it. And the police have been called. Sorry. And so we meet Sergeant Holden and Lieutenant Bracken?
Lieutenant Bracken, yeah. Played by Christopher George from the somewhat popular 1960s action serial Rat Patrol.
And
he died soon after the making of Pieces.
oh, what a legacy to leave behind. And then we meet the Dean Dracula, basically, who looks like Dracula. What's his name? Edmund Purdom?
Edmund Purdom.
But is that the actor or the character?
That's the actor.
So
Dean Farley is the name.
Dean
of the
Farley. So
Edmund Purdom plays.
Right.
Edmund Purdom just passed away 2 or 3 years ago, but he's most well known for playing the role of the student prince from Sigmund Rundberg's operetta that was voiced by the famous tenor Mario Lanza. He was the face to that, and his career generated forward or backwards, depending on how you look at it, to appear a few years later in Pieces.
He also appears in the movie. What is it? Christmas Evil. Or
I believe we found him in another picture at some point. That's right.
I can't remember.
And we may talk about Christmas Evil as well. Who knows? So now we get to what is one of the. There's many great lines in the movie Pieces, but we cut to some students who are talking in the hallway, and apparently they've put a waterbed in
the trainer's office.
Why the hell there's a waterbed in the trainer's office? But we get to one of my favorite lines in the movie and just in movies ever is they're talking about, and someone says there's like 2 or 3 girls and 2 or 3 guys are talking. There's a waterbed in the trainer's office, and everyone's like, "Hey, have you?" And we're gonna curse. So if you don't like cursing, hit fast forward, pause, or something. But someone says, have you ever done it on a waterbed? And this girl...
Have you ever been laid on a waterbed?
Have you ever been laid on a waterbed? And a girl says, the most beautiful thing in the world is smoking pot and fucking on a waterbed at the same time.
And they're smoking pot in the hall.
Yeah, they're sharing
smoking
a joint.
Yeah. Now,
discussion.
Most of us born after 1970 have not had sex on a waterbed.
Well, you can't.
Have you had sex on a waterbed? Either of you?
I don't think I have. No.
My parents had a waterbed in Lakeside in Oklahoma.
I haven't seen too many people with waterbeds in my life.
Someone had a waterbed. Maybe it wasn't my parents. I thought it was like I don't know. But so it sounds like a nightmare. But anyway.
So you're saying you don't agree with her that the most beautiful thing in the world is smoking pot and fucking on a waterbed.
I would think smoking pot and just laying on a waterbed, jiggling around in the waterbed would be fun. I think trying to have actual sexual intercourse where you need to be somewhat in sync with the other person's body, it sounds like a nightmare. But I don't know. So if you've ever had sex in a waterbed, please let us know in the comments below what sex is like in a waterbed. Because I don't know.
The goal here is, I think, for the filmmakers to sort of distinguish the young sexiness and sort of
carelessness, sort of,
of the young co-eds from Professor Brown, who's the staunchy anatomy professor who's about to enter. So they're all sort of giggly, but it is one of the greatest exchanges in the history of cinema. This one scene, and maybe you can post it somewhere where people can review it. But fucking on the waterbed is that's when we had a classic. That's when we knew we were in for greatness.
Also, it sets up the fact that totally randomly later, someone is going to run through the college and find a waterbed.
Oh yeah, no, the waterbed bears itself out. It comes back into play.
Yeah, but they have to set it up anyway. But also, it's just so crazy, and the way the girls, you've got to hear it. And who knows? I put it on Facebook. I recorded it the other day. So good. So then the characters in the film make the biggest mistake in horror film history, and also a very suspicious mistake. The dean wants to keep this murder a secret. He doesn't want it to get out because it might create chaos on the campus. So
well, before that, can I? Sorry, I don't.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
Right after the waterbed scene, like Jeff, as you mentioned, this heralds the arrival of Jack Taylor as Professor Brown. This is the first time we see Professor Brown.
Right.
And Jack Taylor is a strange actor. I think you can agree, Jeff.
Still alive, and he's worked for years.
He's worked for years, yeah. And we don't know what
if
nationality
you know Jack Taylor,
he is.
we would like to talk to him. Please.
We saw him in another movie from another sort of European production horror movie called Erotic Hill. But he's a strange guy, I would say, wouldn't you?
The actor, you mean?
I don't know, Jeff. What do you?
Jack Taylor, believe he is an American-born actor who worked in comedy and Hollywood type things back in the late 40s and early 50s. He's still alive.
Wow.
And does most of his work overseas or in Brazil.
Well, that makes sense. So the dean doesn't want this to get out.
He's suspicious, though. He's a suspicious character.
There's several suspicious characters in this. So can you imagine what would happen if this leaked out? First of all, if there are murders happening in your neighborhood, in your campus, in your city, I think the first thing you need to do is let people know, because the minute you try to keep it a secret, all that happens is more murders. So, and then another one of the greatest lines in cinema, and definitely in this movie, is when, what's his name? The detective says, "We're buying clothes without labels and trying them on for size." What the hell?
That's Franco Brana. He was
Right.
a Spanish actor who
Plays
usually
Sergeant
played
Holden.
the grunt criminal element that was shot by the hero in the spaghetti westerns. He ended up as a chauffeur in Madrid, and he just died last year.
Oh.
God, I'm so sorry for your loss.
I'm
you
drinking a
guys.
shot to Franco Brano.
A shot of Jameson. Perfect. Okay. So then we meet Paul Smith. He Midnight Express, Popeye, Dune. He was the Beast Raban in Dune. Did I already say? Yeah, Midnight Express. He is a gardener at the campus, and he has a chainsaw, curiously enough.
Yeah.
He works with one. So it's a little too obvious, though, for me. The minute I meet him, I know that...
Yes, Willard. His name is Willard
Right.
in the movie.
He's so dead on to be the killer that I instantly don't believe he's going to be the killer. Then we meet some students. Apparently all the girls at the school are whores. And we get into some of that beautiful... Now, the music in this film is done by someone called Cam, C-A-M. And I think this is the first time where the music actually almost gets a little solo, a little spotlight as the student goes for a swim. And we get some sexy Cam original moonlight swim music for this student. So we have a college co-ed, a blonde, and she's going to go for a swim. It's nighttime. There's an indoor pool on the campus. And she takes off her clothes in like what takes way too long to take off your clothes. Her shirt comes off pretty quickly, but her pants take a long, long time to come off. And she's wearing a swimsuit under her pants. But before she jumps in the water, she rips her swimsuit top off, of course, because why bother?
Yeah.
She thinks someone's watching her. She kind of suspects it, and she calls out, "Kendall." So, she kind of feels like someone's out there. And she drops her high-waisted mom jeans and just takes off her top and jumps into the pool. And then we realize there is clearly someone watching her. Inspector Gadget, I think, is watching her. But that's what his shadow looks like. We actually found out online that the killer is based on the shadow, which is why they gave him the specific look.
Well, yeah. I mean, you're referring to the silhouette of the killer, which we see several times in the movie.
But we get the first look
which
here.
Which is clearly the person... with the rubber gloves, who's putting the puzzle together, and someone with a long black overcoat and some sort of fedora, and we never see them except in silhouette, and it looks kind of like
shadow
the
on
shadow.
the walls. Right. So it looks like Inspector Gadget, but apparently it's based on the shadow. So murder number 2. What is this? This is the third or fourth murder in this. We're at now. The co-ed. So we've had the mom, the skateboarder.
I don't count the skateboarder.
Well, but technically online it says it is.
Well, I don't know.
And then who else?
The head
on the campus.
Well, the thing is, we're getting to the next part of the body now, which is the torso.
Right.
And that's the pool death.
Right. So he's going to take the swimmer's torso, which I don't blame him. They've got great torsos. And then Brutus walks in. What's his name, Paul?
Paul Smith.
Yeah, walks in after the murder has taken place. He's chopped her up. Chainsaw, pool is all bloody. The water's all bloody. Paul, the gardener, for no reason at all, cruises into the pool area, finds the bloody
chainsaw.
Scene. The chainsaw, touches it with his bare hand. Like, what is this? And then immediately, I don't even know why or how, but it's one of the mysteries of pieces. A bunch of cops burst into the room and just attack him as if he's and it takes like 5 or 6 dudes to basically subdue him, and he's throwing them in the pools. They're like flies. He just no power. He's tossing them off him, and then the lieutenant pulls a gun on him, and that's when he finally
Franco Brano does. Sergeant Holden.
Sergeant Holden pulls a gun on him.
Freeze or I'll blow your brains out.
Yes.
Well, we wouldn't want that to happen in a movie like Pieces. So,
but can I also say that
yes.
we've also introduced, right before this pool scene, we've introduced another important character, which is Ian, the actor Ian Serra's character, Kendall, who's the college, the campus stud. And the reason this
who
woman...
looks like the campus dork, but apparently is the campus stud.
Yes, and he, the girl who goes to the pool has slipped him a note in the library to come meet her in the pool.
True.
So we also find that during this murder that Kendall is also sort of creeping around the pool.
Right. So, and this is part of Pieces setting up the basically whodunit. We have like basically 6 or 7 likely suspects as we move through the film, and this kind of sets that Kendall could be the campus stud, could be killing these sexy co-eds. I don't think so, but he's not quite the build. You also see the build of the killer, so you kind of know.
Yeah, it's a bigger man.
You also know it's a bigger man, but you also know it's smaller than Brutus. Right. That body is not the size of Brutus or Pluto or whatever. Right. So could have been. Here's my best part. Okay, so the body is cut up. The swimmer's body. The other pieces that he doesn't need are cut up, and they're laying to the side of the pool. The police are there.
He leaves all the limbs and takes the torso,
and they cover it with clear plastic, not a white sheet, but clear plastic, so you can clearly see what's under the plastic.
They wrap individual body pieces up into clear plastic containers
like giant
wrap, and then they place the wrapped pieces onto a stretcher.
As if they're carrying a body away. So it's like they put everything in sandwich bags and then loaded it onto a stretcher.
So then the detective calls over, what's his name, the professor, and says, "I am not a pathologist." And says, "Please look at this. He's the teacher who does what? He does
he's the anatomy
teacher, right? So he's established that he knows dead bodies and stuff." And the detective says, "Could you tell me, could this," as he points to the chopped up bodies, "have been done with this," as he points to a bloody chainsaw found on the scene? "Do you think these could be related in some way, basically?"
Right. And what does Jack Taylor say, Jeff?
Well, I'm not a pathologist, but even the layman can tell it was done with this. I'd say it's elementary.
Yes, that is exactly.
It certainly is elementary.
So almost insulting the police officer who is completely guileless and doesn't get it whatsoever at any point. He's very creepy. So now we've got now we meet the dancers, and we're gonna have a little. The dancers are going to come and go until we have a dancer death.
And by the way, at this time, Christopher George, who plays Lieutenant Bracken, is becoming more frustrated with this case.
He's stupid. He's so stupid.
Well, I guess his what he lacks in police work is
what he lacks in anything. He knows nothing.
Well, that's the beauty of Pieces, is that this is an impossible case to develop, not to solve. The person who's responsible for these crimes is in a position where they just couldn't really possibly commit these crimes and be responsible for it. But in a Scooby-Doo-like manner, the killer has completely exasperated the police, who are understaffed and can't bring people to campus because they just don't have enough people to stop these murders. They've got to be out doing traffic and stuff. And also the police is in a position where they don't want anybody to know about these deaths.
Because the dean,
the parents of the children who have been killed.
Yeah, they're not telling the parents of the murdered girls.
Advertise the fact that there was a killing going on and invite, more killers to campus, or make it harder to catch the initial killer.
Well, just bad press. It's bad press for the school. Yeah.
To work within the framework of the university, and the person they choose to do this, of course, is a professional tennis player, played by Linda Day George, who was at the time married to the actor playing the lead cop, Christopher George.
So the actors are actually married.
Yes.
So
did they meet, Jeff? Do you think Linda Day and Christopher George met on this movie?
No, I think she was in the Rat Patrol, wasn't she?
I don't know, because she's listed in the credits at the top of the film as Linda Day. So I don't know if she just didn't take his name professionally, or she kept her maiden name for that was her professional name.
I just wonder.
I don't know. I just wonder. I still liked I don't know. Maybe they'd been married for a while. I love the idea, though, that they met on Pieces.
Fantastic.
Again, not to let the point get across that she's been hired to come in and play the role as an undercover agent for the police of a murder investigation.
Right.
But she's not a police officer. She's a professional tennis player
Yes.
who actually does not know how to play tennis. And
She's a tennis pro. Yeah.
Comes later.
She moonlights. This is how she makes money on the side. She's a professional tennis player.
Former, right? Isn't she retired?
I don't know. It's hard to say. I don't think they say.
I'd have to look it up.
But this is basically how she pays the bills: is going undercover for the police department for very grisly murder investigations, I guess.
What? Are you telling me she's done this in more than one?
So it's very possible that she met him either on the set of Mission Impossible when Rat Patrol was going on at the same studio, maybe, or as you are hoping for, maybe they met on the set of Pieces.
Wouldn't that be wonderful?
God, a match made in heaven. So, also you have to understand that the police are operating at the mental capacity of like a 7-year-old, basically.
Well, listen, let's not get too down on the Boston Police Department, because they are very short-staffed in this movie.
Well,
like, let's say that right now. Like, there are very few available police to
considering
investigate
how
this in
dumb the
Boston.
cops are in the movie Pieces, I don't think even if they had 1,000 cops working this case, it would be enough, to be honest.
But
Let's be honest. If the smartest guy is that lieutenant on the case, you could have 10,000 cops working this case. It wouldn't matter how many police there were in Boston. If they are operating at the mental level that these two police are operating at, you could have a
frustration and this lack of confidence brings a great cinematic moment to bear, and that's what Matt and I have referred to for years as the Pieces tableau. After the girl is killed in the swimming pool and her pieces are brought out as her torso is missing, and the professor indicates that it very may well have been a chainsaw. The Lieutenant Bracken confides with Sergeant Holden about his frustration and turns around, and all of a sudden the entire basement is beset by lightning bolts, sort of giving that haunted house feeling or that ancient thriller of Sunday afternoons. And the entire cast of suspects is standing in a sort of short people in front, tall people in the bottom picture gathering scene, and beset by the lightning strikes, and all of them looking completely suspicious.
And if you look right below this podcast in the description, you're going to find a link to a photo gallery from the movie Pieces. And one of the photos that we've taken includes the Pieces tableau photograph that Mather insisted that I grab last night, which I did.
The greatest thing about the Pieces tableau, besides the
let's list who's in the tableau.
Who's in the tableau?
The dude in the picture who's not in the rest of the movie.
Well, yeah, I mean the characters in the Pieces tableau are let's list them. It's basically
Brutus,
Lieutenant Bracken
Sexy
looks
geek.
over and he sees the main suspects, and that's it's Willard the gardener. It's Kendall
the sexy
the campus stud. It's Jack Taylor. Is Jack Taylor in it?
the professor.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Jack Taylor's in it. The dean, Edmund Purdom, is in it.
Right.
Hilda Fuchs, his secretary,
Oh, yeah. And
is in it.
I'm going to just tell you right now, she does not die in this movie. But if anyone in this movie deserves to die, it's Hilda Fuchs, the dean's secretary.
Well, actually, CJ, that's a great comment, but it's incorrect. And I'm not sure.
What?
It's true.
She dies in the movie?
The only sore point of the film. And it has been a sore point for Matt and I for 25 years. But also not killed in the film are the two student boys who sort of roam the campus together, Kendall and his friend Schwartz. Now, Kendall has a fate that we are able to live with in its own glory at the end of the film, and we can discuss that in the spoiler section.
Oh, for sure.
But Harold Schwartz is the biggest baboon ever put onto a screen in any cinematic capacity, and he is permitted to live throughout and beyond the film.
And that is a failing in the movie.
So we are going to try to move quickly through some of this because I know that we don't have Jeff for that long, and we definitely need him here to talk about the end of the movie. So let's quickly try to move through a little chunk of this movie. So let's see. So we have the dancers. We meet the dancers. Now we also meet Sylvia from the Boston Globe, who has heard that there is a maniac killer on campus, and we would be horrible if we didn't discuss the scene where the who is it, the dean is like, someone comes to him and is like, look, Sylvia comes to him and says, now I've heard there's a serial killer with a chainsaw on your campus. And he says, what does he say, Jeff?
Well, there's two scenes. That's a great question, CJ. These are great moments in police work and media manipulations. She first approaches, I believe, the headmaster.
No, she approaches Christopher George first.
He's far too busy to talk to anyone.
Right.
This is with Linda Day George first shows up to play tennis with Susie Phillips, who's an important character we meet later, and we see that they can't play tennis at all. But she approaches the school's president or the headmaster, and he's unable to comment because he's too busy. So then she approaches Lieutenant Bracken, who just denies that there's anything going on and claims that there are rumors like this coming out of the university every couple of months and that the student body's imagination knows no bounds.
Yeah, basically, but yeah.
In the face of the fact that there's already been 3 major deaths on the campus.
Right.
And blood and guts.
So apparently on this campus, every 2 or 3 months, there are rumors of a chainsaw serial killer. Is basically what they set up at this point.
Well, yeah, he's being a little dismissive. Yeah, it never happens. And I mean, basically, this poor woman, the reporter, Sylvia Costa from the Boston Globe, is trying to break a story because she's heard things are going on, and everyone is just lying to her face in the most bald-faced sense.
Right. No one's giving her the time of day, and she's very sexy.
Had she gone to the coroner's office, it would have been great to see the city medical examiner deny that there were body parts even in storage, that he had no idea what she was talking about, and he's not servicing any current cases. But that scene doesn't happen.
Only in your imagination. So now we get to the dancer, and there's going to be a dancer death, basically. The dancers are all doing this dance routine. They break, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6,
Also
7,
more
8.
dance music by Cam.
More dance music by Cam. They do this awesome dance number wearing awesome 80s jazzercise dance outfits, leggings, thigh-high leggings, knee-high leggings, body suits, leg warmers, tights, everything you want in your 80s aerobic slash dance class. Now, they take a break. She walks, for some reason, through a spiral of stairs that goes to the basement of the building where another dancer kind of scares her.
She's going to the bathroom, and the bathroom is literally like 3 floors away.
3 floors away in the basement.
There's a dancer who's left later in the dance procedures who gets kind of spooked by being alone and decides that she's going to bail on her dance practice and try to get home before something bad happens to her.
That's right.
This dancer who is eventually assaulted by the killer in the elevator.
That's right. That is the same exact girl. So she basically goes to the bathroom, and then you kind of find her back in the main dance room, and she's practicing alone now after hours, putting in the extra time needed for the perfection of dance that takes place on a campus like this. And it obviously takes many hours of practicing alone after dance rehearsal is ended. And she's in the dance studio, a room covered in mirrors with a dance bar, and playing the loudest music you've ever heard on the tiniest boombox you've ever seen. Basically an AM/FM alarm tape playing radio, if you will. And she suspects someone is watching her. She feels not so safe alone for no reason.
We see the shadow again. We see the silhouette in the window.
But again, the rumors have not gotten out that there's a killer on campus, and yet she somehow feels insecure.
Well, you felt like that. You felt sometimes, a feeling of dread or unease will come over you. You feel like you're being watched.
I guess maybe at that age, for sure.
CJ, it's awesome. She gets into the elevator to escape, and the killer has somewhat circumnavigated. And a lot of these pictures, killers are able to do that. The victim runs at full speed in a direct line. The killer takes a far more circuitous route, walking, and is still able to get there essentially at the same time. They arrive at the cargo elevator, and the killer sneaks in behind the victim, hiding the chainsaw behind his back.
And this is our black-coated, black-hatted man. We see him,
Inspector Gadget / the Shadow.
Yeah.
And she is running about as fast as her heels can carry her. And it's like the old black and white mummy movies. Right. He is walking, or a zombie movie. He is walking very slowly and deliberately, and yet running laps around her.
Yeah, no. He completely cuts her off.
He doesn't break a sweat.
Protocol. Yeah, that's acceptable.
It's acceptable for sure in a film like this. So let's see. Now here's where we also get to.
Well, they get onto this very tiny elevator together.
Right, but that happens later. because
Okay.
before that, right?
Yeah.
Let me see the tree. I'm trying to see. I took notes in order. Oh no, you're right. He gets into the chainsaw behind his back. Okay, so yeah, he steps on the and this is where we establish that it's someone at the campus in a position of authority. So she presses the button to get in the elevator, and a hatted trench coat wearing figure stands next to her, and she says, "Oh, sir."
Sorry,
Right?
sir, you startled me.
Sorry,
or
sir, you startled me.
something
Something like that. So we know it's like a teacher or someone at the campus,
Yeah.
a police officer, maybe.
Person of authority,
It's
right.
someone of authority. But now
We're
she.
led to believe it's the anatomy professor, since he has had various collections of bones and skulls in his possession,
Yeah,
and
they're-
he has been staring at some of the tits of the young co-eds in other scenes.
Well,
And
let's
he's
be
just
obvious.
generally aloof and
She was-
bizarre, and someone who young co-ed, as this victim is about to become, would refer to as sir.
She was shoving her boobs in his face. Let's be honest.
Who?
The
What are you talking about?
the smoking pot waterbed
Oh,
girl
the smoking pot girl.
walks
Yeah,
up
well,
and
earlier in the-
basically
right.
shoves her boobs in his face.
Yes.
But
Well,
yeah.
she's teasing
I
him.
think
She
we're supposed to
teases
think
him.
it's
Yeah.
'Cause he's a
Jack,
pervert,
the
I
anatomy
guess.
professor that's
Right.
getting in the elevator.
So he chops her to pieces in this elevator.
No,
and
what does he do?
Cuts her arms off.
Thank you.
Well,
Yes.
sorry, but
Well,
when
we got to
they-
be specific.
I know,
about
but
this.
later
Like,
when they show the shot of the elevator, she's laying on the floor in a bloody heap.
no. You see him.
Well, he
cut
does
both-
like nubbing off her arm like it's
Yes,
a tiny
he does.
branch.
You
off-
see him cut off
You
her arm.
see the
with
camera on
a-
her body as he literally
Saws
goes
off her
under her
arm.
arm and sweeps up, and her arm falls like a tiny branch you might pluck off of a tiny tree with a little hedge clipper, like just a little.
Amazingly,
Yeah.
she almost survives, and this leads into the drama because she's being wheeled out of the elevator on a stretcher.
Right, she's still
bleeding,
barely alive.
and she's still sort of moaning. And the lieutenant is excited. Now, we skip briefly over the fact that it was difficult to isolate this crime because nobody could quite access this building. And it's Kendall, our young hero, who's able to break a window and lead the cops to the elevator. The cops are not able to deal with the carnage. They throw up and disperse. So
Right.
Kendall's got to deal with the crime scene,
Right.
even though he's only a freshman in college. But he's able to get that information to the ambulance. They come, they save her. They're just about to get her into operation, and she dies on the way out of the building, giving the lieutenant such frustration that he has to turn to young Kendall and say that he needs all of Kendall's help on this case because he's the only one he can trust.
Right.
And he'd be up a tree with this guy if it wasn't for young Kendall helping to solve the case.
I mean, man.
I mean, if the campus stud can't solve the
Well,
case.
yeah, and this
Yeah, he
gets
literally
this also
says,
gets
"I'm
back.
up a tree with this
I'm
one."
up to tree with this guy. I mean, man. I mean, like, and this gets back to the fact that there's very few cops on the Boston police
That's right.
force.
So the only people who are really equipped to solve this case are an ex-professional tennis player who's working undercover and a freshman who's first year at the university.
Right, exactly. So Kendall is now we get to see campus stud Kendall in action. He's having sex with a girl who has a very uniquely shaped breastises, and she's very loud. She's screaming the sex, and he's like, "Shut up! People are gonna think like Chainsaw Charlie's in here with you." Like he's worried that it's making people worry, even though no one knows about the killer because the dean doesn't want anyone to know. He's still worried that somehow they're going to think Chainsaw Charlie's in with her. And she says, another one of the great movies of this movie, like, "What if you gagged me, huh? Then I wouldn't make any noise," or something like that.
Yeah.
That's what she says, yeah.
Yeah, it's awesome. So Kendall,
That works. I mean, I've never been in bed with someone who was making too much noise that they may enlist the help of strangers believing there was a killer, but I don't know, would you volunteer to gag yourself so that you continue the sexual encounter? It's one of the moral quandaries that's brought up by the film.
Right. Well, because, and I think this gets back to the fact that the student body is basically licentious, corrupt, oversexed, and not to be trusted.
No, to be butchered. That's what
And
it's
to be
there for.
butchered. Yeah,
To be
they're
butchered.
primed to be butchered. Yeah.
now here's where we get in. So Kendall, while takes a break from having sex with this woman, and here's where we get into. He sees a shadow moving around the campus, and he feels suspicious, so he leaves her behind to go and inspect what is going on with the shadow. Now we cut to Mary, the tennis pro. She is walking, I guess, home from something.
No, I think she's doing a little poking around, honestly.
Oh, okay.
Because
So she's doing a little...
technically a cop. You know, like Mary Riggs, this tennis pro who is working for the Boston Police Department, is now instilled on the campus as the local, as the tennis coach for the school. That's her cover.
And the only people who know this are Kendall and the dean.
That's right.
And no one else, and the police.
And the police, right.
No one else knows about
No one else
her
knows. And so she's doing a little poking around, and it's night, and there's already been this...
That's true. She's seeing if anyone's out there at night cruising around.
The dean is not happy about this arrangement. He
No.
feels that putting an undercover cop on his campus to try to sort out this mess is asking a lot. But he goes along with it as to try to be
reluctantly,
yes.
But, he doesn't want any...
Walking around, Kendall sees a figure in the woods, if I believe, running back and forth.
Yeah.
Well, no, she does. She sees a figure.
She sees a figure. Well, he sees something out his window, obviously a shadow.
She's poking around
and
the
she sees something in the
building.
woods. So everyone is seeing this nighttime shadow cruising around the campus. Obviously, to all of us, who would it be other than the killer? Creeping around the campus in the middle of the night. And then she is basically attacked. Would you call it an attack? I would call it an attack.
Yes, it's an attack. She comes around the corner. She comes around the corner with her flashlight.
Right.
Holding her flashlight, and someone kicks the flashlight out of her
hand for no reason. And then basically it's now this is where we get into one of the awesome, interesting facts of the movie is that so the producer of the movie, hold on, let me find this. I'm looking it up on
checking your notes.
Right. So because the producer Dick Randall was simultaneously making a kung fu film in Rome, a cameo for a Bruce Lee imitator named Bruce Lee with one E. So not Bruce Lee, but Bruce Lee with one E.
Or Bruce Le.
Le was written into the film, even though this makes absolutely no sense with the context of the rest of the film, is one of the little facts.
No, but, as I said at the beginning of the interview, there really is a joy in being able to just obliterate your plot points and your charges that you're responsible for and need to keep in the air and keep straight and legitimate to keep a plot going, to be able to just screw it and add something for...
Your Bruce Lee impersonator.
Suspense, extra violence, extra conflict.
Yeah,
and to make it a racist ploy at the same time is awesome.
Yes. So he attacks her, and she thwarts the attack.
He karate kicks her.
Yeah,
basically.
he starts and he pulls out all these fancy moves with his arms and legs. She just kicks him in the nuts. He's standing over her. She
knocks him out.
And knocks him out. He knocks the wind out of him. He's on the ground. And then Kendall cruises up on a dirt bike that apparently he uses to get around.
Right. You hear this motor running like it could be a chainsaw.
Chainsaw, maybe. Who knows? So it's Kendall, and he comes up and says, "Mary, are you okay?" And basically, and then the Asian dude.
Well, she says, "He attacked me. There he is." And this guy's lying on the ground. And this guy
jumps up. Fine now. Perfectly fine.
And Kendall says, "Hey, it's my kung fu professor. How's it going, Chow?"
Yeah, what happened?
No, I mean, that's, And then this guy, Bruce Lee, this actor, Bruce Lee, says, in this very strong sort of Chinese accent, Asian faux accent, he says, I'm
out jogging. Next thing I know,
I am on
ground.
Something I eat, maybe. Something I eat. Bad chop suey, maybe. So long. And he takes off.
Right. So
now, this in most standard horror films, what you'll get is a woman sort of creeping around looking for some solution or some safety valve.
Right.
And what she'll get is a cat jumping out of a closet.
No.
And a high
she got a kung fu
sting to scare us all.
Right.
This is essentially Peace's version of that moment.
Right.
There's something in the woods. It's dangerous. The vulnerable.
It's a false scare,
But instead of a cat or some other distraction that's not the killer, it's the kung fu professor that just attacks her because he had some bad chop suey.
Yes.
Obviously, that would drive anyone to attack people.
And if I may, guys, a little sidebar here, a little history. When Jeff and I first rented this movie in 1987 from the Hastings video store. We brought the tape home. It was kind of late when we started watching the movie. And we got up to this point in the movie, which is maybe 45 minutes into the movie, maybe an hour into the movie.
You're going to disclose this? So we're going to go ahead.
Yeah, no. I mean, I think this is an important thing. I mean, like, because it's still one of my favorite memories about this movie is that at this point, when we were at my parents' house in Hastings-on-Hudson, New York, Jeff and I are watching this at about 1 a.m, this videotape, and we had never seen the movie before, and we're kind of enjoying it, and we get to this point. There's already been a couple of great deaths, and then we get to this, and Jeff, I don't know what was going on with you that night, but Jeff was suddenly like, you know what? After this Kung Fu professor kicking the ball scene, he was suddenly like, you know what? This is bullshit. I can't take this. I'm going to sleep. He's like, he's just like, this is the stupidest thing I've ever read or seen. And you got frustrated. Am I right?
Now, they're 25, 26 years later. This is still difficult to talk about. Just to air my expertise. But there are a number of problems. First of all, understand that I had an appetite for nothing more than butchery, and I wanted to get to the hardcore violence of the film. And any delay in that measure was going to cause me frustration. Second of all, I had just probably had a couple of drinks. I was tired.
Yep.
I don't know what my
at the
problem
Zickel
was.
house? Yeah, I'm going to guess you had a few
drinks.
drinks.
Less than 24 hours later that I rescinded my comments. I backed up and I took a look at what we had in front of us and realized that I had made a terrible error in judgment and that the Kung Fu professor was all part of the joy. This is similar to how people may feel the first time on the roller coaster when they're just like, I want to get out of here. And then after acclimating themselves to the reality of its greatness, they discovered that they had made an error in judgment. So just for the record, I've long since apologized. And
you spent the last 30 years atoning for
that one evening. But
you know what, Jeff?
Still likes to bring it up. And
sometimes some people that I have met and hated initially have turned out to be my best friends. And I think that maybe that is the strong emotional reaction that you had to your first viewing of pieces. And let me say, in today's society, anything, whether it's a painting, a movie, a TV show, that actually gives you strong feelings is doing its job. Whether you're disgusted by it or you love it, I think anything that gives you an emotional reaction is art. And I think that this scene, the Kung Fu scene, is what elevates the movie Pieces immediately to high art.
Or low art.
Well, disagree with that.
It gives you a feeling. You're going to have an emotional reaction to the Kung Fu scene. So anyway,
let's forget about my admission.
Let's get into this. So
it's in the books. It's a great moment.
It's a great moment. So now we've got the reporter from the Sylvia Costa from the Boston Globe. Now we're going to get to this great death that Mather talked about earlier. She's snooping around the campus. She's alone.
And this is all on the same night. And remember, this is around the same building. It's night out. And right after Mary Riggs has been assaulted by the Kung Fu professor, and then Kendall shows up and sort of, diffuses the situation, and everyone kind of goes home. We realize that around the other side of the building, or nearby, Sylvia Costa, the reporter from the Boston Globe, is also snooping around the building.
Yes. So there's a lot of snooping happening. So, this is also when you realize that Sylvia is clearly over her head. She's snooping around at night being stalked by a shadow that she doesn't even seem to realize she's being stalked by.
Yeah.
And your gut feeling is this girl is in over her head.
Yeah, she's
so
definitely in.
She ducks into the billiards room. You might think for safety, but then you realize she still doesn't know she's being stalked. My initial feeling was, she's trying to duck into a room for safety. Mm-hmm. This girl still has no idea she's being stalked. So she tiptoes through this room, and that is why she doesn't turn on the lights, because you're like, get in there, turn on the lights, make a scene. Someone's stalking you.
Right.
And you're like, why is she still tiptoeing around? Because she doesn't know she's being stalked. So she checks out the sauna. She's going through buildings. She opens the sauna door, and apparently there's just in the sauna is nothing but a heavy breather and a chainsaw. So she closes the sauna door,
and I'm
continues.
not sure she actually sees the chainsaw or not.
Well, we see the heavy breather and the chainsaw is sitting in the sauna.
Chainsaw sitting in the sauna.
And this is where the heavy breather starts to sound like my dog Betsy, who snores a lot and has a breathing disorder. His breathing goes from like a deep breathing to almost like a wheezing at this point in the film. So this is when we get to the... So he's stalking her. She realizes she's being chased. Chases her into the room with the waterbed discussed earlier.
Yes.
Now, this is the most graphic, slow motion, horrible... the killer chases her. She jumps on the waterbed. He stabs her. He starts stabbing her. She's screaming in slow motion and writhing from back and forth and flips over to try to crawl away, and he just stabs her in the back, and then the final blow is right through the back of the head and out the front of the mouth. And that's another photo you're going to see in our photo gallery if you click below. But one of the greatest deaths and a great shot in the movie is that knife going through the back of the head and right out the front of the mouth. Ah!
And I would warrant that the entire existence of Sylvia in the movie and the news media and the scene about smoking pot and fucking on the waterbed was purely precipitated on the fact that the producer was able to acquire the use of a waterbed. And had a waterbed at their shooting location, I don't think certainly.
Do you think someone donated the waterbed?
The great scene we had earlier in the movie in the hallway.
Well, waterbeds were very big at that time.
They were very big and they were very sexy, and they were up, and anyone who used them deserved to be punished. But the other thing I have to say about the Sylvia Costa death, it's one of the most graphic. It's probably the most graphic and rapey deaths in the movie. It's also an extraneous death in terms of plot,
right?
Because Sylvia Costa is not one of the pieces for the puzzle.
Right.
She is just a meddler who is eliminated.
Right.
And she's done
but apparently
so
some part
with,
of her...
with extreme prejudice.
He doesn't use her body in the piece? In the pieces?
No, Sylvia Costa is not part of the pieces.
So she's just killed for being a meddler.
And adding more to the scene, there's a supernatural element to it. When she gets into the waterbed room, the killer has her so stalked that he's able to make all the exit doors sort of slam shut violently to create more fear. But physically, such a door slamming would have been virtually impossible. You couldn't have been all those places at different times.
I wish you could see Mather laughing right now. He's like curled up in the fetal position.
The door is slammed shut. Yeah, all around her.
So now we get to the tennis pro killer, the killing of the. So there's a tennis practice.
Well, this is kind of a high point.
This is a big turning point in the movie. So
this is the highest point of horror films ever. This poor girl is out playing tennis by herself.
Which is just terrible for her. So she decides it's time to go take a shower, clean up. Maybe
CJ, let's just stop there because she doesn't decide that at all. The killer can't butcher her out there on the tennis courts.
Yes.
In the middle of campus, so he tries another tactic altogether.
Yeah, right.
And let's just say that this tennis player is not Mary Riggs, not Linda Day George, the cop. This is Susie.
Just a student.
It's Susie Phillips, who we assume is like
she's the best student tennis player in the campus.
The best tennis player. And she's out on the court by herself practicing, just like hitting balls on the court in the middle of the day.
This is after her match with Mary, right? Mary was earlier. She had a match
Mary,
earlier with Mary.
So we've already seen Susie
and she
Phillips.
lost, but she gave Mary a good run for her money. So now she's practicing, possibly so she can beat Mary next time.
Yes, she's getting
something
better.
Comes up. So
the killer turns on the sound system to play the school football fight song.
Oh, is that what that?
Decimal level that Susie cannot concentrate on her tennis.
She's very annoyed.
She's annoyed. With a great deal of frustration and just screw it, go inside and take a shower.
Take a shower, right? That's right. So some crazy music comes over the PA system, right? Which is apparently the school fight song. Now she goes in to take a shower, and you can still hear this music, but this music is so loud that no one on the campus is going to hear anyone crying for help anywhere. It's coming over these huge loudspeakers, the PA system. So she goes to take a shower. She's naked. She's showering. The whole time you're expecting someone to kill her. Now she's getting dressed. And then you hear a chainsaw. She's got her sweatpants on, her baggy, frumpy sweatpants, and no shirt or bra.
No top. Yeah, completely topless.
And yet the least sexy sweatpants you could wear.
Walks right on in.
Yeah, from the waist down, she looks like your grandmother. And from the waist up, she's a hot teenager.
Yeah.
So She runs.
Killers appear. Killers jump out of places.
Yeah.
Or step from behind curtains. This killer just walks right in the locker room.
Walks right into the locker room.
Yeah.
Oh, well, we'll get into that later.
Yeah.
So she runs. He chases her into a bathroom. She shuts the
into
door.
a stall, a bathroom,
She
like a
shuts-
toilet stall
right.
in the
and
in
he
the locker
cuts
room.
a perfect triangle out of the door, and the camera angle is you see her inside the stall screaming, and he opens the door and cuts through her stomach, which is actually a pig carcass in the actual filming. They used a pig carcass to portray the girl's stomach and shoved a chainsaw through it. This made me remember the awesome part that we forgot to mention about the dancer's death when he walks through the mirror and floods the light with room.
Mm-hmm.
A door that you didn't know existed. But you know what? You'll just see
That's
that.
all
When
right.
you
That's
when you see the dancer's death, please notice that he opens a mirror in the wall that no one knows even exists.
But let's talk a little about the
So-
Susie Phillips death for a minute.
Right,
Or
so we've got
first of all, like,
a
all right,
pig carcass. So an animal is died. The first animal is died.
well, all
For-
right. You know, we don't know that as
We
viewers,
do get
but
another
like,
chance to watch some
Yeah.
acting just face front. This poor actress is made to cower in the corner, and then before she's
Yep.
cleft in twain, she's made to wet her pants, and we get to watch her pee herself right before the butchery is initiated.
that's true.
I would pee myself just if I wasn't near a bathroom.
And
had
by
to
the way,
go.
if I could just, it's a minor point, but the killer does not carve a triangle in the door, but a half moon.
Really? It's
Yeah.
kind of like a teepee, isn't it?
No,
kind
it's
of
a
flat?
half moon. It's literally like a crescent, not a crescent, but a half moon. And like just so it basically carves a huge chunk out of the door of the bathroom stall just so he
For
could
some
reach in
reason-
and undo the latch.
For some reason, now you're annoying me. Now you're a piece's dork.
Okay, well, I'm proud to be a piece's dork. I have no problem.
Okay,
with it.
so Kendall, they hear some kind of sounds. Now, everyone on the campus has now been alerted to
And
this
can
crazy
I
music.
also just jump
Yes,
in,
of
like,
course.
and just say that like Susie Phillips, the tennis girl, is cut in half from the waist down.
Yes.
And it's because she's the legs in the
He needs the
pieces
legs
puzzle.
for
Like,
the
so he
pieces.
takes Susie Phillips's legs, right,
Tennis
Jeff?
player legs. Swimmer torso, tennis player legs. The arms
Dancer
of the
arms
dancer.
and the head of the girl
And
who's
a smart head.
Yeah,
She was studying.
She was studying. Yeah.
So she had a brain. So
I think we're giving this more gravity than it actually needs.
probably, but who knows? There's a whole debate now. Kendall and Mary are debating why this music is being played over the sound system.
Well, at this point, also Kendall and Mary Riggs, the tennis pro, they're kind of sweet on each other a little bit, right, Jeff?
Well, he's definitely sweet on her.
Like
In the midst of all this tragedy,
Yeah.
Mary and Kendall are about to go and enjoy their own game of tennis.
Yeah.
While Susie is in the process of being bisected.
And also,
in the locker room.
Kendall
And
had
it's
given Mary a ride home on his motorcycle.
I don't even know if it's a school fight song. I think it's probably some Charles or some. I'm not sure who.
No, it's like
composed it,
it's
but it
like a
had the
Copeland. It's
early
like a
20th century
Aaron Copland
dance
march
song.
or
and
something.
they notice that, and they forego their tennis game to go and investigate what the
this
racket
music?
is all
How
about.
could you play tennis with this music? It's crazy. So, she basically finds Pluto or Brutus.
Ludo.
Bluto.
Paul
Bluto.
Smith.
Yes,
Smith.
Paul
Willard,
Smith.
the gardener.
And they make their way, and everyone's like, someone must be testing the sound system. I don't know. It's not my responsibility to test the sound system. That's someone else's job. But they find the sound room, and he goes to flip off the music, and she's like, don't touch anything. You might destroy evidence. And he's like, looks at her, and then like shuts off the music anyway, because he's annoyed by the music, and I guess it doesn't matter if he erases the fingerprints of the killer.
Before he does turn the music off, he notices that his utility keys in his pocket,
Right.
used to get into the gym in the first place,
Are not his
aren't
keys.
Really, his keys.
Right.
We never come to really know what that means. Whether the killer switched keys with
I think
him,
he's
or whether he
stolen
lost
the
his
keys of
And-
this guy.
and clearly, a moment to try to make somebody look more suspicious, but it was
Right.
another epic fail on the part of the writers.
Now we get the music off. Kendall runs into the building and finds the murdered tennis player in the bathroom stall. He comes out. He tells Mary that the tennis player is dead inside.
It's
Susie is dead.
Susie Phillips.
Susie Felix is dead. And Mary is so upset. She says,
she goes
we
in
were
and
out
investigates
here.
it.
Well, does she look at it?
Yeah, she goes in
So
and
look,
looks.
she sneaks a peek.
Okay, she sneaks a peek. So while they were out here fucking around with the music, excuse my language.
We're here fumbling around with this music.
Right. He was killing her, and
The lousy bastard.
the
was in
lousy
there, yeah.
bastard was killing her. And here's where we reach one of the greatest cinematic moments I've ever seen. You'll never forget it. I
No.
promise you. If you
Unforgettable.
You will, if you
High
watch
point.
Pieces, you will never, ever, when you are dying at 93 years old on your deathbed, you'll be breathing, wheezing, there'll be phlegm in your chest, and that rattling breath, your last few breaths are kind of rattling. What will be going through your head is this scene from Pieces where Mary stands
Linda
there.
Day George.
Linda
yeah.
Day George screams,
Abject terror.
"Bastard!" I'm not going to do it, but she does it, I think, 4
No,
times.
It's a scene that not
three
only
times.
will you remember, but when you watch the film for the first, second,
On your
third,
wedding
20th,
day.
30th time, you're going to have to watch that scene several times.
Yeah, it's
As
so
you-
good.
Believe what you're actually looking at. It's amazing.
No matter what is happening in your life, perhaps it's your wedding day, you'll be exchanging vows with your lady or your man. You will be seeing Linda Day George screaming "bastard" in your mind as you grow older and your parents die and you're sitting in their funeral.
If I could do a quick personal anecdote,
Yeah.
if that's all right. Jeff and I created a play in 1988 together.
True.
A horror homage called Toby's Play that has been performed again and again over the years by different casts.
I believe Jeff has a video of it, which we should
Jeff
put
has
on
an original
YouTube.
video, and I feel like a lot of Toby's play was kind of centered around the bastard line.
Bastard!
Around Linda Day George's, exclamation of bastard. I feel that and Human Butchery, that and Wizard of Gore were like really some of the tent poles of that play. Wouldn't you say, Jeff?
Well, the play itself was quite an enjoyable process because we had an emergency opening and we needed to fill it with something. And I had used some lines from Pieces in a directing scene at NYU just kind of as a goof and ended up getting an A on the scene. So as we started to put together our favorite horror moments, we kept thinking of funny things that would be great to pepper the story with. And we just kept discovering moments from Pieces that we wanted to include. And it just seemed to be like we were in our own moment of catalytic sort of genius. A moment would happen that required some sort of climax, and something from Pieces, something from Sleepaway Camp, something from The Wizard of Gore would just become available. And it would be so funny that we couldn't even rehearse it. It would take us an hour just to stop laughing to the point that we could try to employ that drama. And I would always make Mather, CJ, perform some of these skits in public. He hated calling attention to himself, but I always enjoyed the scene so much. That they all finally take place in Toby's play. So I'm going to probably have to move along, folks, to give the Sunday service that's going on here.
Right.
I may talk to the congregation here at my school in Deerfield.
I hope you're talking about Pieces.
And the various important thematics that have been brought up. But I'm glad we got to touch upon the bastard moment because it really is the high point of the film.
It is. Now, Mather and I, Jeff, thank you so much for joining us. You can find Jeff on Facebook. Are you on Twitter, Jeff?
Absolutely not. No, I'm barely on Facebook.
Okay,
and have trouble following that. I might need some help administrating that.
Jeff, would you like me to put a link to your
Deerfield, Massachusetts? We're at Eaglebrook School, and if anybody would like to look us up and have any questions about the school or about Pieces or any of the films we've discussed, I'd be happy to communicate with people via Facebook or through CJ's podcast.
And you kind of teach a class on butchery at Eaglebrook School, don't you?
That's right. It's called HB 101, Human Butchery 101. It takes place in the springtime, and it involves reading a lot of, science fiction or horror, even Edgar Allan Poe up to Dean Koontz and Stephen King, but also requires the students to memorize the butchery speech from The Wizard of Gore and to become familiar with some of the tenets we've talked about in a classroom setting. I have to keep it a little bit more PG rated, but as one of my former colleagues testified on the Facebook page of the advertisement of this podcast, he actually showed it in front of his photography class a few years ago.
Awesome.
They never thought the same of me afterwards when he mentioned that it was my favorite picture.
Well,
Fantastic.
Jeff, we're sad to lose you.
Yeah,
Mother
we're
and I are
so
gonna
sad to
finish
lose you.
this
I feel
movie.
like I want to keep going through
Jeff,
the movie.
I think that the three of us need to review a few more movies for future podcasts, so we'll talk about that in the future. Mather and I are going to finish Pieces, although, God, I honestly don't feel qualified to do this without Jeff present, but we got to...
I'm gonna bow out also, not because I'm short on time here, but because in my butchery class, it's one of the tenets that regardless of how well known an ending is, that we never give away the actual ending, just to not rob those. And so it goes against my moral code. That's why I brought it up at the beginning.
That's
so
good.
It's probably a good point for me to bow out before you
Good.
guys get to the spoiler portion.
Great.
No, that's good.
involving
We're
the
getting there.
killer
Fair enough,
and
yeah.
involving the testicular area of Ian Sarah playing the role of Kendall at the end of the film. So I'll let you guys cover that, but we will talk again soon about more movies.
Okay, Jeff, thank you. We will talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Love you guys. Take
All
care.
right, take care,
Okay.
man.
Well, thanks to everyone who listened to us saying goodbye to Jeff. So, now after the murder and the screaming of the bastard,
Yeah.
everyone has decided that they really need to find who this murderer is now. No
Well, yeah,
fucking
I mean,
around.
there's been about 4 people murdered on campus brutally with a chainsaw. So yeah, I mean,
And the lieutenant even tells, like, you got to take uppers. I don't care if you're doing cocaine, crystal, whatever. Uppers. He doesn't care. You got to stay awake and you got to solve this.
well, you saw.
and maybe
he
Kendall
tells
can help.
Sergeant. He tells Frank O'Brana. He tells
Right.
Sergeant Holden that he's got to like work through the clock because once again, there are very few people working for the Boston Police Department. So basically, Frank Brana, Sergeant Holden is understaffed. And he has to work around the clock by himself to try to
Right.
get leads on this chainsaw murder spree.
Right. So, now we get a little glimpse. The murderer has been putting this body together. He's got a whole body, it seems, hanging somewhere on a wall. And he's putting the bloody clothes of his dead mother on this body. And he tries to put the shoes on. They don't seem to fit just right.
Exactly,
Right.
right.
The feet are not right.
Right. The legs are Susie Felix's, and he thought he had the whole deal with Susie Felix's legs.
No.
But the shoes are not fitting on
The
the
shoes
feet.
are not right. So we see him trying to put the shoes of his dead mother onto this corpse. And then it cuts to the feet of Mary walking. Really nice cut to show us that perhaps Mary is the one missing
Right.
piece to this jigsaw puzzle.
Yes.
So Mary is walking her furious little feet in her high heels to the dean's quarters. He's invited her earlier in the film to just come and chat, get to know him, all that. He knows she's there to investigate the murder and yet is also treating her as if she is an actual new teacher on the campus.
Mm-hmm.
So he invites her over. She shows up.
Mm-hmm.
He's making himself some tea. He offers to make her some coffee and he does.
Well, he also has a bit of a Edmund Purdom playing the dean has a bit of a British accent or some sort of indeterminate mid-Atlantic accent, and he says, "Would you like some tea, or
or a chainsaw?"
Or no, or I'm sure you'd prefer coffee because of course
Because
Americans,
she's American.
Yeah.
And we're vulgar and we eat McDonald's and we drink coffee.
we drink coffee.
We don't have tea
Right.
and crumpets and creme brulee as you would if you were fancy and wealthy and English.
Right.
We drink coffee. So he makes her some coffee and she says she'd like some saccharin rather than sugar. And
Well, she's watching her weight.
and he is surprised that a woman with such a gorgeous figure would even be thinking about her weight at this point. But perhaps
She's an
it is-
athlete, you
perhaps
know.
it's the saccharin that has kept her in such good shape. So everything he does is basically suspicious at this point.
Yeah, completely.
We know it's an authority figure, and Mary has gone to question the dean, and maybe it's the dean. We don't know, but every motion he takes, every moment with him is spent in extreme suspicion. So he makes her a cup of coffee. She basically drinks it in one sip, and then he offers to make her another cup of coffee.
He makes her some instant coffee.
Instant coffee, right? So she's saying, like, look, I haven't found anything. It looks like we're going to have to start, like, tearing this campus upside down to find out who the murderer is.
But can I just say, like,
course.
we see that as he goes to prepare her coffee, her instant coffee, he's boiling a kettle in the kitchen. She's sitting in the living room. He goes in there and he takes out of his cabinet a vial and a dropper and
Right, of
drops
saccharin. Saccharin drops
or
at
something.
first.
I mean, like, it could be saccharin. We don't know what it is.
Well, I think the first few drops in the first cup are saccharin.
Maybe.
And then the second drops are from a different bottle.
Well, I don't know.
And I think
it's all
that's
the
when
same
he
bottle.
switched. Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. He's basically drugging her.
Yeah.
Because she's saying that people are going to find out about that there's a murder on campus, and he clearly doesn't want anyone to know. So now he's drugging Mary. She lets him know that she's going to start this search of the campus, and he still wants to keep it on the down low. So, and then we're also cutting back to the cops who are enjoying some delicious Wendy's fast food.
Well, and when we say the cops, we get back to Franco Brana, who plays
Right.
Sergeant
Franco
Holden,
Brana.
who's a records
The
guy.
least expressive man in movie ever.
Yes,
As you called him
possibly the
last
least
night.
expressive actor I've ever seen. And he is working, checking records, checking notes on the possible killer. And his only help is Kendall,
Right.
the student.
The student.
So, and they're both working overtime in the library,
Of course.
and they're eating Wendy's. I mean, it's a small
Right.
detail.
It's just a great.
I guess Wendy's had some sort of
a guest starring role of Wendy's. So, but also is revealed in this questioning with Kendall that the dean's mother was apparently hacked up by some suicidal murderer. And this is when we realize, spoiler alert, watch the movie, that the dean must be the killer. Because the dean is the person whose mother was hacked up in history. And if you have any brains at all at this point is when you realize that the dean is the killer.
What they say exactly is Franco Brana checks an old file and realizes that Edmund Purdom, Dean Farley's mother, had been hacked up when he was a child, and it might have affected his brain.
Perhaps. Maybe.
Because
he did the hacking.
Yeah, so that's a lead.
So Mary starts to basically act like she's been bitten by a rattlesnake. She's paralyzed.
Well, this is concurrent. Yeah. So
it's all happening at one time.
So Mary Riggs
she's paralyzed.
She's paralyzed from the poison that the dean has put in her coffee.
Yeah, and he's like basically saying to her, like, I know you can hear everything I say, but you can't move.
And when I say paralyzed, like, she is She's a stiff. All she can move is her eyeballs, basically.
She looks at her feet. He looks at her feet, those perfect feet that will fit into his mother's
And this
shoes.
is So this is the extra piece that he needs, is the feet.
Oh, and then we cut back to the police station. Now we're going back and forth. And they get a telex rather than a phone call.
Right.
Why call when you can telex? Last night you were like, where is this from? From overseas? So, and then we cut back to the dean, and he's massaging those feet of Mary's, those perfect little feet. She's paralyzed, and he's massaging them. So they're on to him, though. The police are coming to the dean's apartment. They've all decided that they're going to the dean's quarters. And will they get there in time is all we're wondering at this point. Will they be able to stop this last and final murder of Mary? Yeah, can we save Mary? So the music is upbeat, is a little bit edgy, and there's a dash of suspense. So Cam is doing his job.
Basically, we have Christopher George, Lieutenant Holden, Lieutenant Bracken, Franco Brana, Sergeant Holden, and Kendall, the student.
Right.
The three of them are rushing furiously
They ascend the stairs
to the dean's apartment to save Mary. They realize that the dean might be the killer. And
they're
Mary
going to
is
his
with her.
place basically to arrest him, and I don't think they realize yet that she's there.
No, they do. They know she's there.
Oh, they know she's there. Oh, yeah, because she said she's... That's right. Isn't it Kendall? Someone says, well, she was going to see him tonight. So they're pulling up to the door of the dean, and Kendall is there, and they're like, you should just lay back. You're not a cop. And he's like, please, I got to be a part of this. And they're like, look, you just stand behind us, and if we shout down, you're going to hit the deck and ask why later. And he's like, great, no problem. Whatever you say, whatever I can do to be a part of this. So they bust through the door, they go through the pad, and they find nothing. And then they find Mary paralyzed in the den, but they don't see the killer. Now, Mary is paralyzed, and they're all looking at her and talking to her, and she's doing everything she can with her eyes to point that someone is hiding behind the curtains or something like that. She's just basically sign language with her eyes. No one gets it because they're all idiots. And now remember, there's also that line that he says, "I'm very strong." Yeah, when he's massaging
It's a good
her
line.
feet.
It's a good line.
Yeah. The dean basically says something.
Well, he says that as Mary is becoming more poisoned,
Yeah.
more paralyzed by the poison that he's put in her instant coffee, they're having this conversation about who the killer might be. And Edmund Purdom looks basically dead in her eyes and says, "Well, and he's
very strong.
Well, he's trying to put it on Professor Brown, Jack Taylor, and he's like,
he's gay.
He's like, well, Professor Brown is a homosexual,
Right.
and he kind of says it that way, a homosexual.
Sexual.
And so he's trying to throw, he's trying to indicate that something might be awry with Professor Brown.
Right.
He lives with his mother, that kind of thing. And he said that that once, Professor Brown and he got into an argument, and that they've had problems in the past, but that he is very strong.
He makes a point to say, like a 4-year-old might say on the playground.
He said,
he's very strong.
Professor Brown, God, I can't remember the whole line.
No, I already said the line. He says, what is it? I'm
Professor Brown. He's a homosexual.
Right. Oh, that line I don't remember. So
he tried to, he said something basically he tried to attack me once, or we had no, he's like, but I'm very strong.
I'm very strong,
Yeah, I'm very strong, and he looks into Mary's eyes as he's saying this,
right,
as she's becoming completely paralyzed.
So they find Mary. She's paralyzed. She's hinting that the killer is behind the curtains. And they don't get it. Whatever. They go to look for something. Kendall is left with her because, of course, he's got this romantic interest in her, and he's trying to get her to walk. He puts his arms around her, tries to get her to stand up and walk off this poison that's in her body, and she's still gesturing with her eyes toward the curtain. And basically,
Edmund Purdom, the dean, comes out with his butcher knife. He was all ready to cut off Mary's feet with a butcher knife, with a big
when the police showed up.
When the police showed up, and so he hid in his apartment. The police come in. They find Mary paralyzed.
Right.
The police are searching the apartment. Kendall is there with Mary, trying to get her to talk or figure out what's wrong with her. And while he's looking away, the dean all right, well, this is spoiler alert stuff.
Well, but I already said that 5 times. It's spoiler alert. We're going to talk about it. If you haven't seen the movie, that's your fault at this point in the podcast.
The dean comes out and tries to kill Kendall with the knife, and they struggle. And the truth is, he is very strong. Edmund Purdom is a big guy. He is strong. Yeah,
and he probably would win that fight if the police didn't walk in and shoot him in the center of the forehead mid-fight.
Christopher George walks in and fires off a round and kills Dean Farley.
That's right. So the murderer of Pieces is now dead. And we cut to a moment later. There's a scene. Now Kendall is sitting in the chair, kind of thinking back of everything that's happened. The police walk in and they're like, oh, don't. He's kind of weirded out, and the sergeant says, and then Kendall finds the puzzle. He finds the puzzle of the naked girl, and he says, look at this. That's really fucked up or weird or whatever. Yeah. And the sergeant says, if you think that's weird, we find stuff like that all the time. And he leans on the bookshelf that spins around, revealing a secret room. On the other side of the bookshelf is this jigsaw woman's Frankenstein's body spins around.
It's where he's been keeping the pieces.
Right. So now they're in the room with the pieces. The woman created of the pieces, who falls away from the wall and lands on top of Kendall, who is screaming in horror as the naked woman's pieces body falls on top of him.
And this happens because we realize that the dean has a cold walk in a freezer locker in his apartment, and
behind the bookshelf.
And what we didn't realize is that it's behind a spinning bookcase, a la Young Frankenstein,
right?
Kind of
so he can see it anytime he wants.
So and Frank Obrana, Sergeant Holden mistakenly leans against the bookcase, spins it around, and this stitched together body, this corpse that is made up of the limbs of all these girls that have been murdered, stitched together like a Frankenstein, falls out of this secret compartment and falls directly onto Kendall, knocking him to the ground.
True. It is true. And so then we have a cut, basically a swipe, a cut, whatever you want to call it. Now Kendall is sitting in the chair, a little shaken over what's happened. So they're taking the dean's body out on a stretcher, and Kendall is staring at the dead body of the girl, the pieces on the floor, covered in a sheet so we can't see her. And the detective says, like, don't brood over it, kid. And Kendall's talking to the cop. The cop's like, let's get out of here. Kendall reaches kind of over the dead body to grab his jacket. And what happens, Mather?
Well, I mean, the movie is over at this point. I mean, Mary is saved. She's fine. The dean is dead. They've discovered the jigsaw body that fell on Kendall after revealing the secret compartment in the bookcase. And obviously he had a fright, so he's sort of recovering a little later. They're getting together. The body of the jigsaw puzzle girl that the killers put together has a sheet over her in the middle of the apartment. And they're leaving. The movie is over. Basically, the movie is over.
It's over.
And Sergeant...
People are walking out of the theater.
Sergeant Holden says to Kendall, do you still want to be a cop? And he says, like, are you kidding? I don't know what that means, whether he does or he doesn't. It's sort of hard to say. But he looks down. They're leaving the room, and then once more, Kendall looks down at the sheet-covered corpse of the jigsaw girl on the floor of the dean's office, and he's staring at it for a second, and the sergeant says, Franco Brana says, don't brood over it, kid. Come on. And Kendall says, all right, let me just grab my jacket. And he kind of like leans over to grab his jacket. He leans over the corpse, basically, to grab his jacket to leave. And as he does this, basically, and like the dead stitched together corpse sits up.
Arm.
Like the arm of the body reaches up out, from under the sheet and grabs Kendall's balls. Penis and balls.
His package, his junk.
His whole junk, and grabs it, like digs her nails through his jeans into his body and crushes.
Squeezes his genitals till they explode.
Basically, and there's blood all over his pants, and rips down. And
and blood comes rushing out, down his pants, down the hand, down the arm. There's a close-up of his face, twisting in pain.
Pain and
screaming, and we cut to credits.
Right, and that's the end of the movie.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening to our podcast on Pieces. I have to thank Jeff Connor for calling in from Eaglebrook School from the past, from 1980.
From 1987.
87, when he first saw
Deerfield, Massachusetts.
Deerfield, Massachusetts. I want to thank Mather Zickel, who has a Facebook page and a Twitter that he almost never updates.
That's true.
We'll have links to all of that in the description below. You can see Mather on this new season of
Newsreaders
and House of Lies,
yeah,
right?
Season 2, House of Lies on Showtime.
Both of them starting up in the next week or so. Mather's going to be on both. Mm-hmm. And of course, you can find me on Twitter at CJ Arabia. You can follow at Geek Nation. You can find us on Facebook as well and read our blogs. I have blogs on Geek Nation all the time. Also, lots of other great content on Geek Nation. And I guess that's all. So what do we say at the end of every one of these podcasts, Mather?
I think we say, stab you later.